on your way, you can block the doors and open the kitchen.
Guys, hold on! He's outside of this home! He's in the home!
The active shooter is the future.
News 7 cameras have just captured these dramatic images of terrified students fleeing Eastdale Secondary School. Witnesses report a man with a rifle entered the school just after 9 a.m. and shots were heard shortly after.
The active killer, a violence impossible to explain, shocking us into a horrible new consciousness. Murder all too frequently at the hands of the middle class. All too often students venting a rage that doesn't fit the trappings of their lives.
There's a new kind of killer out there, and he's got one goal and one goal only. That is to murder as many of your citizens as humanly possible until somebody comes and makes him stop. And we must grasp deep in your soul that there's a new kind of killer out there. And if he is actively shooting people, if he is actively killing people, you have no choice but to go in. As long as you're going in, let's go in smart.
Colonel Dave Grossman is a pioneer in a field of scientific study termed killology, research on the reactions of police in killing circumstances and the psychological impacts of violent behavior. Behavior which is profoundly connected to you, the frontline officer. For if you don't make the active killer stop, who will?
What the kids are doing in the schools today predicts what they're going to do in the workplace tomorrow. And we know that workplace massacres are the future. We pray we're wrong, we hope we're wrong. The active shooter is the future.
Though it may seem that these attacks are an American phenomenon, Canada and the rest of the world have not been immune.
The single greatest terrorist act, the greatest body count achieved on the ground in Canada, was the Montreal massacre.
On the afternoon of December 6, 1989, 25-year-old Marc Lapine entered the University of Montreal's engineering school armed with a semi-automatic rifle, killed 14 women and wounded 13 others, simply because he had been rejected admission to the school. One of the most incomprehensible active killer situations occurred in Britain.
In England, you think about the IRA, you think about the bombings, and yet on the ground of mainland Great Britain, the greatest body count was the school massacre in Dunblane.
On March 13, 1996, Thomas Hamilton, a 43-year-old loner, walked into a Scottish primary school and killed 16 children and their teacher, wounding 12 others and 2 more teachers before fatally shooting himself. The bloodiest school shooting in American history occurred on April 20, 1999. 2 Colorado students walked nonchalantly into their high school, fired from a multi-gun arsenal, and lobbed homemade bombs throughout the school. They killed 12 students and 1 teacher before committing suicide. This was not the action of impoverished misfits. Columbine High School is in a middle-class suburb of Denver. Jefferson County Sheriff John Stone was the man in charge that fateful day.
We're a relatively affluent county. The area where this happened is was kind of a high-end residential district, a very good school, and the least thing I would have ever thought about was something like this happening in our school. The thing that's not going to happen in my backyard is always does.
With guns, knives, or explosives, in schools, restaurants, or the workplace, the active attacker enters these target-rich environments and inflicts casualties in very short timelines with no intention of stopping.
The truth is that they're cowards. They're not looking for a fair fight. They're not looking for a gunfight. They want to find vulnerable, innocent people, and they want to butcher them. The presence of one armed, determined man can make a profound difference if he's got his heart and mind and body ready at the moment of truth.
The police responsibility in these moments of truth is clear and inarguable: to preserve human life.
Every other sane, rational creature on the face of the earth flees from the sound of the guns, with very few exceptions. A few brave people crawl up to treat the wounded. A few people crawl up to take pictures. But only one person moves toward the sound of the guns with the intention of dealing with the guy making the big noise. Every other rational creature flees The bunny rabbits and the students, they're gone. The shots are fired, bodies are falling, the teacher and the gazelle, they're gone. The lawyer and the cockroach, they're gone. Every other sane, rational creature flees from the sound of guns. But your magnificent people go 100 miles an hour to get to a gunfight. Is there something wrong with them? No. There's something gloriously right with them.
Those officers who find themselves moving to the sound of the guns should be mindful of the active killer history. That treating these situations as you would a barricaded gunman to contain and wait for tactical intervention can and will result in the continued loss of life.
The first couple of cops on scene establish an inner perimeter, and we wait for the SWAT team. But what if this guy is going to kill a couple hundred of your kids? Dozens, hundreds of your kids before the SWAT team arrives.
Recognizing the very real probability of continued active shooter situations, police administrators and trainers in America have been quick to retool their policies and improve response tactics. But lessons learned from Columbine on the importance of training for these events may have arrived in Germany too late. In April 2002, 18 people died in Erfurt High School when an expelled former student, Robert Steinhauser, went on a shooting spree. He killed 14 teachers, 2 schoolgirls, and the first responding policeman before taking his own life.
The police in Germany didn't think they needed that. I mean, this doesn't happen in Germany. This doesn't happen in civilized countries. The first cop on scene basically put himself in harm's way and died. The lead cop might die, but his backup man can make sure that that perpetrator has just fired his last shot. That's what the active shooter training is all about. Every single citizen who died after that first cop died is the responsibility of the police supervisors and the police trainers who should have trained those boys on how to do active shooter training.
Despite the known history of these events and the carnage caused, some police administrators are still willing to roll the dice, not yet convinced of the importance of providing the necessary training and tools patrol officers need.
What we've got to do is we have to treat the active shooter, the active killer, like a fire. We know that in the last couple of decades, to the best of our knowledge, there's not been a single child killed or seriously injured by school fire. Your child is thousands of times more likely to be killed or injured by violence than they are by fire. Your employees in the workplace are thousands of times more likely to be killed or injured by violence than they are by fire. If we can spend all that time preparing for fire, and we should, because every life is precious, can we not spend a little bit of time preparing for the thing that is literally thousands of times more likely to kill your kids or your employee?
So how do trainers prepare frontline officers for the active killer or the active attacker? The importance of firearm proficiency and sound tactical principles can't be underestimated. But also key is the responding officer's confidence in their own abilities.
There's a tendency to think that you can't do it, that you're not capable, or to doubt your own ability. I'm going to tell you a secret. Every human being on the face of the earth is insecure. The ones who could admit they're insecure are a little more secure than the others. The finest football player, the finest baseball player in the world wakes up in the morning, he doesn't know if he's going to have a good game. But he goes to the game, and he goes to the plate, because that's what he does. And odds are he's going to do a good job. They're properly trained, equipped, and prepared warriors who bear the shield in defense of our city and civilization.
Greatly improving the responding officer's odds in these situations is their ability to manage stress. Conditioning officers to overcome the stress presents a unique challenge to police trainers and may involve a new way of thinking and some unconventional approaches.
Now, I want you to understand the concept of stress inoculation, very important. If I'm going to inoculate you against a disease, what do I have to do? Give you a little dose of that disease. Then the real disease comes by and it doesn't kill you. If I want to inoculate you against stress, what do I have to do? Give you a dose of the stress. If you were firefighters, what would I inoculate you against? Fire, burning buildings. But you're not a firefighter. You're the one responsible for protecting our citizens from the thing that is thousands of times more likely to kill them than fire, violence. And we need to inoculate you against violence.
Violence inoculation begins with realistic training scenarios, crucial for the mental and psychological transitions to the real world.
Firefighters practice going into a building with simulated fire and putting the fire out. Cops need to practice going into buildings with simulated active shooters using simunition training.
As with any training, repetition is essential in developing what's known as experiential thinking, creating an automatic response to a deadly force encounter based on past experience and training.
It's been proven under stress, it's the training that gets us through. It's how many times we physically have done it. How we train and what we train is what we remember under stress. Shooting positions, different grips, stance, loading, unloading of a firearm.
Police trainers have been tasked with finding and educating their officers in building entry tactics that provide maximum officer safety as they rapidly deploy or move quickly to the threat, not the typical building search.
In building clearing, it's more slow and methodical. The rapid deployment has some of the same skills, some of the same techniques, but it's sped up. We're not so much clearing to contact and backing off per se, we're clearing to find, to stop the shooting. We're stopping this active shooter. We're going forward. It's the offensive mindset.
Many police services have adopted a tactic developed in the U.S. after Columbine called Immediate Rapid Deployment, or IRD.
The immediate rapid deployment is us getting together with a specified and set out contact team. And this formation that we're teaching, the 3-man, the 4-man formation, is what's going to get you into the building safely and through the hall safely, ultimately stopping the active shooter.
But the number of officers is not etched in stone. Training and tactics must reflect the equipment and resources that your organization has, not what they'd like to have.
Number of services train with 4-person contact teams. We do train that method. In a perfect world, that's how you're going to be able to go in and deal with this type of situation. In a not so perfect world, we are training with a 2-person contact team, and that kind of resolves the question about response time, not having enough people on the ground, not having 4 patrol officers going right away. You go with 2, you go in and try to resolve the situation.
2 San Diego, California officers resolved their situation on March 22nd of 2001 when they responded to a shooting spree by 18-year-old Granite Hills High School student Jason Hoffman. This less than 3 weeks after another gunman killed 2 people and wounded 13 at nearby Santana High School.
There was one county deputy who happened to be in the school to do an interview with his kid's teacher, just normal consultant with the teacher, but he's armed. The school resource officer's there, he's armed. 2 armed police officers form a 2-man movement contact team. They race to the sound of the guns, and they drop the suspect in a hail of bullets.
Key to their success was the officers' ability to make a rapid assessment of the situation, develop a plan, and accept that they had to act.
Let's link up. There's a minimum of 2 men. And you go in, and better yet, with your quad, and you go in and you take this guy out. So we're not going to go in stupid. We're not the Lone Ranger staggering in there.
If it's an active shooter, those officers that show up at that door are those people's only hope. There's no one else. No one else. No one else.
The first responding officer is faced with the daunting task of making the initial assessment, gathering all available intelligence, and quickly determining an appropriate plan of action.
We were told we had 6 to 8 shooters. We had fire coming out of the building. We had explosions going off. We were told we had somebody on the roof with a sniper rifle and hand grenades were being thrown. I mean, it's not exactly a call most policemen would like to just walk in the door and say, hi, I'm here to help. You need to find out what is really going on.
Is there an immediate threat to life? What is the suspect's location? What type of weapons are involved? Answers to these questions are essential to develop a plan of action. Also important is to know what resources are required, including weaponry.
We never think of bringing a rifle to school, we do now. We would never think of a child bringing a rifle to school either and killing people.
Practice and training in contact team formation and movement is crucial. when entering into the unknown.
We had a large complex facility, 250,000 square feet, 50 exit doors, gymnasium, large facilities inside, and the building was on fire. In certain spots we had gas odors in there. We had horns that were so deafening our people could not hear, so our radio communications with command was lost. Once we got into the school, a lot of variables, and there is not a cookie cutter approach to every school shooting because they're all different.
The situations may be different, but the tactics used in rapid deployment are well established.
All right, all left. Clear right. Clear left. Guys will be right. Yeah. Moving right. Help's coming. Where did he go?
Slicing the pie and the quick peek methods of clearing corners. Safe techniques for moving through doorways, windows, hallways, and stairs, or the fatal funnels. Proper firearm discipline. And constantly updating your threat assessment for obstacles and dangers while on the move. History has shown that as long as the suspect is allowed freedom of movement, the likelihood of additional casualties is great. So contact teams are trained to move directly towards the threat with controlled speed and aggression, which may involve moving past the wounded.
Hold on, bud. Help's coming.
Do we have time right now to stop and deal with these people? Medically? No. Our job as a contact team is going to be go in and find the active shooter and stop the active shooting.
Contact! Hallway on the right!
One of the most difficult aspects of training is preparing officers for the physical and mental changes they may experience as they get closer to the threat. Changes that will influence behavior.
We know that our heart rate gets up over a certain amount of beats per minute. We lose some of our fine motor skills. We lose some of our complex. And what do we have left? Our gross motor skills. So the calmer we can stay in this extraordinary situation, the better off we are.
Known as tachypsyche, symptoms also include perceptual changes, diminished sound, tunnel vision, time-space distortion, or slow motion time. These are normal reactions of those moving toward a threat. It's under these conditions that repetitive, realistic stress inoculation training serves police officers best, creating the experiential thinking, the automatic response necessary for success.
The trainer's challenge is to get as much time as we can on the tactic itself to get people feeling comfortable with the tactic.
We do our active shooter training, we do our immediate action training, and we inoculate them. And when the moment comes, they're ready.
Everyone get out of the room! Make your way to the doorway, get out of the room! Behind me, down the hall!
Proper training and teamwork is crucial for success. But police are only part of the response requirements to the active killer. Communities must also educate their citizens and initiate effective programs and countermeasures, such as lockdown procedures.
So the schools and the workplace can take action by having drills ahead of time. We secure our people in securable locations. It doesn't have to be Fort Knox, it just has to secure them long enough that the police can come and deal with them.
Consider this. The time taken to view this production is roughly the duration of most active attacks. In less than 20 minutes, the damage is done. And as always, it is the frontline officer, the last line of defense, society relies on to take action in that time frame. Society has created and is responsible for this new type of killer, but the onus is on patrol officers to stop them. Maslow's hierarchy of needs reasons that society is built on a foundation where its citizens are safe, secure, and out of danger.
Another human being coming to kill you and your family and your kids is the most toxic ingredient that can erode away at that foundation. And those magnificent individuals who go towards the sound of the guns are irreplaceable. They're the one thing that society cannot live without. And what most of us don't understand is the police officer is wielding the universal human phobia, interpersonal human aggression. This is one individual who's not going to look the other way. This is one individual who will look you in the eyes and hold you accountable for your behavior. And if you use deadly force, he will use it back, and by God, he's a lot better at it than you are. That's what it's all about.